Hello, I'm Lucy, and welcome to Beautifully Unfinished. It's the podcast about growth, about life as it truly is, and it's creating a space where we can navigate this complicated, beautiful midlife journey together. Last week's episode was called Do You Have 8 Minutes? That was all about connection and about how when life gets a bit overwhelming, sometimes all it takes is having a few true friends. It's all you need. And this week, life handed me 2 stories from 2 different people in different parts of the world, but both the stories stopped me in my tracks and reminded me what truly matters. Sometimes life has a strange way of repeating the same lesson through completely different people, almost as if the universe is quietly trying to get your attention. And this week, it certainly got mine. I was talking to a very dear friend in Australia for a catch-up. Immediately I could tell that she was completely rattled. I asked her how she was doing, and she told me the most devastating story. The day before, their neighbour's house had burnt to the ground. Her wonderful husband and son were the very first people on the scene, and in those terrifying moments, nobody knew if there was anybody inside the house or not. Can you even imagine that panic? The flames, the smoke, the absolute chaos, the fear, the panic, the irrational thinking, that awful feeling of just not knowing. And then, in the middle of all of this, her son spotted this little Labrador puppy trapped up on a balcony. He was terrified, he was traumatized, it was absolutely awful. But somehow he managed to encourage that puppy to jump into his arms from the 2nd floor of this burning building. Now just imagine this scene for a moment. There's this young man and his dad running into the middle of a busy road, holding this shaking, injured little dog, trying to figure out what to do next, terrified and overwhelmed. And then complete strangers stopped their car. Perfect strangers. They took them straight away, rushed them off to the veterinary hospital, and by the end of the day, the puppy was being sorted out and all the costs were covered too. Honestly, I sat afterwards thinking about it for a long time, because in the middle of all this devastation, how amazing, humanity still showed up. The house was burning, but kindness ran towards that house. And it made me stop and think, because in moments like that, nobody cares about the furniture. Nobody cares about possessions. Nobody cares about the scratches on the walls or whether or not the kitchen was modern enough. The only thing people care about is everybody safe? Who needs help? Who needs holding? Who needs saving? And then, almost in the same breath, another friend who lives just down the road from me, who had just been away for a few days, shared a completely different story. She had travelled to Kariba. Kariba is a beautiful man-made lake here in Zimbabwe in Africa. It's surrounded by wildlife, such harsh beauty, and for many extraordinary memories. It's a place filled not only with breathtaking scenery, but with history and emotion too. And while she was there, she visited her old family home where her and her late husband started their young family. I found myself trying to imagine what that must feel like for her, walking back into a place filled with echoes. The walls may still stand. The once beautifully manicured garden, I imagine, now wild and taking over all the cracks, a bit like a masterpiece of survival and art. But it's the memories that must have reached out and grabbed her. The memories of the laughter, the children, the ordinary little moments that somehow have become priceless in her loss. And suddenly both these stories landed with me in exactly the same place in my heart. That home was never really the bricks and mortar. Home is in fact that wonderful cliche of home is where the heart is. Because bricks and mortar can disappear overnight. Home is the people. It is the memories. It's the feeling. And perhaps these stories affected me so deeply because they cracked wide open something very personal in me too. 24 years ago, within 24 hours, we lost our home during the notorious Zimbabwe farm reform program. And overnight, not only us, but many farmers in Zimbabwe, farm workers and their families too, were completely left destitute. Even saying those words now, it seems somewhat surreal, but that was the reality of it. One day there was certainty, there was routine, security, familiarity, dreams for my future, for our future. And the next day, it's all gone. And then for me, 10 years later, pressed repeat. It happened all over again. Another forced move, another overnight uprooting, during which was commonly referred to as a jambandra. It was our family farm of 50 years. It was gone by force. And I think when you live through something like that, in my case twice, it changes your relationship with things. Because eventually you realize if your identity is only attached to the possessions or property, life can certainly shatter you. And I think that became the foundation of why I stopped placing great value on bricks and mortar. Because when you lose homes over and over again, you learn that home has to become something a lot deeper. Something nobody can take from you. It has to become the people, the memories, the resilience, the stories, the love, the laughter. Because somehow that survives anyway. And perhaps not by accident, my old school motto, and aptly also the SAS motto, was "Who dares wins." And when I was younger, I believed bravery meant to be fearless. But life has taught me something very different. Sometimes daring is simply starting over when your heart is broken. Sometimes daring is rebuilding when everything familiar has disappeared. Sometimes daring is choosing softness in a world that could have made you very hard. Sometimes daring is allowing yourself to have the courage to be vulnerable again, to trust, to love again, to hope again, especially after so much loss. And perhaps somewhere along the way that this motto has actually become my driving force, because despite all of it, despite the trauma, despite the losses, despite the rebuilding, despite the ground ripped from beneath us more than once, I realize now I have won. Not because life was easy, no, but because life did not harden me. For me, personally, I still believe in people. I believe in kindness. I believe in humanity. And maybe that is the greatest victory of all. And perhaps that is one of the quiet gifts of midlife too. By this stage of your life, most of us have lived through enough to know that life is not always neat and tidy, and it's certainly not predictable. We have lost, we have loved, we've rebuilt, we've grieved, we've sometimes started over, we've been humbled certainly, and a fair bit of life is under our belts. Perhaps we finally begin to understand what truly matters. It's not the perfect house, not appearances, not the endless pressure to have everything figured out, but it's the people who love us through the messy bits, through the conversations, through the relationships, through memories, the ordinary moments we once rushed through, because somewhere along the way, many of us realized that life is far less about collecting things and far more about collecting moments. And perhaps that wisdom only really comes through living. And I think that matters because adversity can do one of two things. It can close your heart, or it can crack it open even wider. And honestly, without adversity, without challenge, and without loss, I truly do not know whether I would actually have the empathy that I believe I have now. Because suffering has a way of softening you, if you allow it to. It teaches you to notice people differently, to hold compassion more deeply, to stop sweating the small stuff, To understand that every single person you meet is carrying battles you know absolutely nothing about. And perhaps that's why that little Labrador story affected me so much. Because those strangers didn't stop to ask, what do I get out of this? They simply saw suffering. They responded with humanity. And maybe that is what home really is in the end. It's not the house, but the people who run towards and through the fire with you. It's the people who sit beside you in grief. The people who help you rebuild. The people who become your safety when life no longer feels safe. One day that house might belong to someone else or be returned to the earth. The furniture may well disappear and the photographs may fade. But the love we gave people, the way we made them feel and the memories we created, those things survive us. So maybe this week, hold people a little longer. Worry a little less about the little things. Pick up the phone and make the call. Take the photo or the selfie. Say the words. Sit in the moment. Because home isn't the house. It's always the heart inside it. And on that note, I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd so appreciate it if you'd like, follow and subscribe. And until next week, you take care of yourself and stay beautifully unfinished.